example that I encountered while out boondocking on these public lands, and it just so happened I happened to pull up into a spot in this BLM land, and I parked my rig. There was a little space behind me, and then there is a couple in a tent. So I gave them their space, and I had my own little space. But lo and behold, someone decided to bring their Class C right in between me and the tent. Now, we have all this space that surrounds us, and they wanted to just come right in between me and the tents. So immediately, I got a little nervous because I'm like, really? You really have to be that close? And to my rescue, believe it or not, this gentleman right here, him and his wife, were at the same BLM land that I happened to be at. And I had previously met him at another event, but we didn't really know each other. Nonetheless, he came over and he was saying hello, and when the guy pulled up, he may have noticed how uncomfortable I got, but he and his wife, this is where the allies come in at, he and his wife invited me to come camp next to them. That's an ally. You got to have your antennas up. And they helped me move my camp over to their camp, even though we didn't really know each other, but he could sense that I was a little nervous and concerned. So I would have had to just move my camp altogether. But Rob will speak more about that, I'm sure. And let me also say that, now how do you connect to other allies? How do you create allies? One, if you don't know it already, our village, it's called Our Village, I believe ourvillage.com. That is a site where you can go on and see who is in the area that you may be in, and they may be just letting you know, hey, I'm part of our village, I'm camped here, if you're camping by yourself, etc. Now, I haven't utilized it yet, but I've heard good things about it. Also connect with other groups like Escapees, and I'm part of Loners on Wheels. That's another RV group that you can connect with. And there's different chapters in different states. You can hook up with allies like that. But let me say one important other thing that happened to me. I travel solo for the most part, but I have made quite a few allies around the globe. And just within 2 or 3 months, I've had to call on like 4 people. And one of them, I just happened to be in San Diego. And Joan, you probably seen Joni, who travels with her cat Sunny in the transit, but she happened to be in San Diego. I needed some place to be while I had some maintenance done on my vehicle. She offered her transit, to me while I had my vehicle worked on. That's an ally. I was also in Yuma, and I had to stay over there for a few days. And Sally, which I don't think she's here, she offered her Airstream RV for me to stay a couple of days while I took care of what I had to take care of. And then also in Nevada, I know Val is around here somewhere. I was in Nevada. All this happened within like 3 to 4 months. And Val offered to assist me where I needed. And even Arizona, right here in Arizona. So you create these allies so that when you happen to be passing through, there's people you can call on. I'm hoping someone will talk about another incident we had in another BLM land, and I'll let probably Rob talk about that. I'll chime in later. But I'll leave you with this. If we witness a crime, when a crime occurs, but we turn a blind eye, are we any better than the perpetrator, the person committing that crime? Just something to think about, and I'll turn it over to Rob.
Yes, I should hold this. My name is Rob, and my wife is sitting over there, Marvy, Marvy, and so for us, being full-time nomads, kind of extends beyond living in a van. Before this, we were 5 years in Mexico, and just by the nature of Mexico, it's not as dangerous as people think it is, but you still have to have some kind of awareness. But for me, speaking as a man, being an ally for me just basically is twofold. One is being aware, and generally men are very aware of their environments, and also the dynamics between men and women is very different, and how we handle situations is really critical. And I have found myself doing the wrong thing where a situation escalated, and then kind of learning through my wife and other people a softer approach to try to de-escalate it, remove the ego out of the way, and kind of run away and learn to fight another day. And so that's one thing that I'd like to convey to the men that may be watching this or paying attention to this at all, is just kind of how we interact with the women around us, and in situations also. What you were saying earlier was an interesting situation where I had been with Marby in a location for quite a few days. And then when Miss J pulled up, and then this gentleman pulls up very close to her, immediately I knew this was like an intimidation. It was in her space. As a man, this is a way we intimidate. You get in a person's space with your vehicle, and he clearly was irritated about something, and he basically said, "You're in my spot." And the funny thing is, he said, "I was there this morning and I just went into town." Well, he had never been there. And, there's the whole desert, there's, everywhere. So obviously this guy was somebody that you wouldn't probably approach on a rational basis and try to argue with. And so it was much easier just to walk softly and make the invitation over. And it helps a lot being married. I think if I was single, there would be a different dynamic working with a woman, say, "Hey, why don't you come over and park by me?" So, but with my wife, and she met us before, it was a lot easier to extend that support if she wanted to have that, and so that worked out well. I think all of us, if you've been around, you've been traveling, everybody has horror stories to tell or some scary situation. What I would bring today is very simple, a couple things. One is be aware of your environment. If something feels wrong, leave. It's very simple. If you're by yourself, just leave. You just start your car. Marby and I had a situation where I teach English for a living online, and I'm sitting in the driver's seat with my cell phone talking to a Russian student, and there's somebody parked, some guy who wasn't quite right in his head, about a couple hundred yards away, and next thing I know, he's looking at me with binoculars. Then the next thing I know, he's coming at me, pointing, carrying an iPad with a camera, a beeline straight to me. And I'm like having this conversation, trying to teach, verbal phrases, and this guy's coming straight at me. And then he comes right beside where my driver's side is. I was in the passenger side. My dog was in the driver's seat going crazy with the door open. And this guy literally was halfway almost in the van pointing this iPad with me. And clearly it wasn't right. I overreacted, started using colorful language, asking him to leave, and it just escalated the situation. And Marby did a great thing. She just came from behind, reached over and shut the door, and the guy screamed and then left, and then we started the keys and left. So I learned an important lesson about trying to de-escalate a situation. Clearly it wasn't safe for either one of us to be there and to do that. But it's really important that we work together. Arizona and I all of us were involved in a situation where we had some people that were maybe involved with drugs or mental illness. And it was a situation where we tried to resolve, and Arizona will talk about it, she got the license plate. But one thing that happened that I would encourage people to think about is, if you're boondocking in the middle of nowhere, are you prepared? What happens if something happens in the middle of the night? Do you have a contact number? 911 doesn't always work. They don't know where you are. And what do you say? You can't drop a pen, and tell them where you are in a GPS. And so it would behoove you to think about, seriously, getting a contact emergency phone number, which I did. It took me actually 20 minutes to find out the correct phone number to call for law enforcement. And so we had that in case these people came back. So just to wrap up right now, for me, it's important to, as a man, to be aware of my situations, not only for myself, but for the people around me. And then how will I approach women? And that can be a topic that if you guys have questions or you have something to add to that, you can say too. So that's it for me right now.
Hi, my name is Erick. I actually created this panel while I was scheduling presenters, and so I feel honored that Ms. J actually asked me to join a few days ago. What really inspired me to create this panel was that I had witnessed something happen at the band build in November in Parker. And in this case, I witnessed a number of things. But in this case, a gentleman at 8:20 p.m. had come over to me and a friend who were just enjoying the beautiful night sky and said, "That lady's generator over there," it was right across from my rig and it didn't ever bother me, "her generator's so frickin' loud and I'm gonna go put this thing around her generator and blah, blah, blah," And so I thought, oh no, I had red flags go off. Oh my goodness, this is a man who she doesn't know. He's gonna go into her camp and maybe tamper with her equipment. So I had some red flags going off, and in a few minutes I hear screaming. He didn't do what he said he was gonna do. And so I hear the screaming, I hear her yelling back, of course, to protect herself. But I hear him yelling much louder. And so I jumped up, being a woman, and I ran to definitely have her back, to make sure. I didn't know what I would do. I just knew I wanted to be there for her. So yeah, he came around the corner and he told another lie that she was the one who was yelling. And I just said to him, I just spoke up and I said, "Well, I heard you," So then he went on his way, and eventually he left. He even left the camp. He was going to leave in the middle of the night. There were people around who it wasn't on their radar, and I thought, holy cow, like we talk about this, especially when women travel together, we keep each other safe. We look out for each other, and we both give each other a certain amount of space, but we're definitely looking out. So I thought this is something that needs to be people made aware of, whether it's a man who's doing the harassing, maybe there's a cranky issue between, man on man, woman on woman, woman to man. We're all nomads. This is our community. A lot of us, we've left the city, the urban areas, because, neighbors are too close for comfort. You can't get away from things that are going on that you're uncomfortable with. We're out here, and it's really a matter of negotiating sometimes. So some points that I want to talk about is the aspect of either being a silent bystander, which is so prevalent in our society. How many times do we hear news reports? Some are very famous news reports where somebody's been violently attacked, even right in front of people on the street, or maybe they were listening from their windows and nobody called 911, or nobody just yelled and stepped up, any kind of way, right? So my master's degree is in conflict resolution, so I think of these things. I really think that even in my master's program, we didn't really give enough attention to intervening versus bystander silence. So, just a few things that I wanted to mention is, any of us are a bystander who are in any kind of situation observing it. But an active bystander is doing the sorts of things that Rob has done. He recognized the situation, and in that situation where he was an ally for Ms. J, he did not escalate the situation. So it's great that you were able to make a distinction there. you know, in situations where somebody approached him and it triggered him. But guess what? His wife got to de-escalate that situation. And then they got to, you know, take it from there. But a lot of times, some things that we want to think about is, what is our privilege in the situation? Use your privileged position, whether, you know, whether it's your gender, it's your race, etc. And be the one, because I will say, I remember that situation with that woman and the two young men who pulled up. We were in Lake Havasu, and Ms. J retired to her van really quick, right? And Rob and I, so, you know, Rob's a white male, I'm a white female. And so we addressed it. And these were, you know, they did look like they were drug addicts. And we addressed the situation, looked like they were gonna do some dumping or something. And we weren't disrespectful in any way. But they then became really derogatory towards us. And I really felt like this was a good move on Miss J's part. She knew, she knows when to choose her battles. So then I took pictures of their license plate in their car, and Rob called it in case anything happened. I will say also for Miss J though, this is a woman's woman. She's an excellent mentor to women nomads. Last year, she guided 10 of us from the women's RTR over to the RTR and really scouted out just the right camp. And very matter-of-factly, this is a method of intervention, is when men just were walking through our camp, she very politely and matter-of-factly would approach them and say, hey, I'd like to let you know this is an all-women's camp, and I'd really appreciate it if you could walk around or, you know, ride your bicycle around. A lot of these women, it's their first year, and it'd really make them feel more secure and comfortable. You know, so that's a form of subtle intervention where you're not escalating, and it was well received, you know. So we had a nice safe camp where lots of women kept joining us, you know. I know that I'm running out of time. I want to leave you with this one statement. The trust and personal liberty necessary to sustain our communities depends on our ability to interact free of violence. As members of the community, we are ethically bound to preserve peace. Thank you.
So what we're going to do is just take 2 to 3 more minutes, wrap it up, and then we're going to offer time for questions. And just to piggyback off of what's already been said, you know, as a RV transporter, a lot of you may know me as the RV lady, transporting those 200,000 etc. units. So safety is always at the top of my radar, and people are always at the, you know, in my eyesight. I'm always scanning, I'm always being observant. I let my guard down when I feel that I can. But for the most part, I take precaution to make sure that, again, I stay safe, the vehicle I'm transporting, I get it there safely, and then the people around. I have to make sure that I don't do anything to cause them to be, you know, even uncomfortable or feel threatened or unsafe. But as far as the incident that Rob and Arizona were speaking about, yes, I did at that time retire to my vehicle because I saw trouble coming. I mean, I said you could clearly see that these people, unfortunately, they were just on another wavelength. But the fact is, I wanted to observe from afar and not be in the midst of all this conversation that was going on with them, just in case something did jump off, which it did. And we handled it, and they handled it. So my thing is just that as nomads, I would like to say we should have each other's backs, regardless. We are a community, as Arizona just said, and while we're out here, we have each other, and we should feel comfortable that we can come to one another if deemed necessary.
I think for millions of years, fish have survived by traveling in groups. I mean, they may get 1 or 2, but the majority of them survive. Also, something that's pretty much fact, if you look at the numbers, is that when you're on BLM land, well, actually, national parks are pretty safe. People think they're anywhere it's dangerous, but you've got, I think, getting, really assaulted is very low. I think drowning is number one, car accidents is two. It goes all the way down the list. But when you get into RTO or BLM land or public land, I do notice that the closer you're into town, that's where most of the craziness happens. People are in towns and they live out and they go in to ask for money, or they're weekend yahoos that get out there that want to get drunk. And I just sometimes don't want to go anywhere near a town in BLM land. But that's the time that Marvy and I probably gravitate more towards other people. When we're out in the middle of Bryce or something, we go off by ourselves in the middle of nowhere, and we've never ever had a problem. But in larger, closer to metropolitan areas, we do that. Now, because we're married, we do have a tendency to like a lot more privacy. So we do tendency to park, 100 feet or 100 yards away from the main group. It doesn't stop us from walking in and saying hi, making some contact with people. You don't have to be buddies and super social to reach out. And besides looking at the fact that people don't come out in their vans or their RVs to help you, you should not be shy about, if you feel threatened, to go to someone's RV or to their van, knock on the door, at least stand by it. It's your safety. So, you've got to make it through that event somehow. So don't feel you're alone. People deep down inside want to help each other. So make that a priority in your life, not only to be aware and help other people, but to help yourself and reach out. People will help you.
So I just want to follow up with a few tips that I have for bystander intervention. The 3 Ds of bystander intervention are distract, delegate, and direct. So you can distract the situation. You can actually distract the harasser, even by coming up and asking them a question, maybe even directions or something like that. Distracts them away from whatever might be going on if you see them headed towards someone else. Delegating. If you don't feel comfortable being the person to intervene, ask somebody else if they are willing to get involved. Delegate to someone else. And directing. Direct. Just directly address it yourself. And something to know is this. In cases where one person will stand up and then the group comes along, it's called the snowball effect, 50% of the time it de-escalates. So if you see somebody else also standing up against some form of harassment or even violence, even go stand by them. I think that even our presence can make a difference. I think a lot of times we're afraid that there might be retaliation. Other people are going to disagree with us, or but just by even standing there and being witness, I've done this sometimes when I've seen police brutality in public, and I've seen it de-escalate, where I was afraid that somebody might get brutalized. So we can make a difference just by being there for one another, just to witness. And then very importantly is somebody who has been attacked, either harassed or violently attacked or threatened, then even after the fact, going to support them, just giving them the support and the comfort that they need. The woman in Parker, the Vanville, when I talked to her the next morning, said to me, I couldn't sleep all night. I was afraid this guy was going to come back, and he even kicked or hit my rig. I felt so bad, I was like, oh, one more step would have been for me not to just jump up and go follow him, but even when he left, go to her, check and see, are you doing okay? I heard what happened. But what I did do was I was leaving the next morning, and I did enlist some men in the area to look out for her. I let them know what happened, and I said, please keep an eye out. This was just not cool at all.
Well, I think that pretty much wraps it up. We have a few moments for questions if you have any. If not, yes, just come up to the mic. I believe it should be on right here if you have a question. And keep in mind, this is for everyone. It's not just a girl thing or a guy thing. It's a nomad thing, and we should all be here for one another.
Ms. J, in the beginning, you mentioned three different organizations or whatever for allies, and the only one I was able to write down was Runners on Wheels. What were the other two?
The other one was R Village, R, just the letter R, then Village, and Escapees. And then there's a whole slew of other meetup groups that you could find online on Facebook. But those are the three I'm familiar with, and would possibly recommend. And we're hoping, well, Howard, I believe, is hoping or had thought about doing something on that level, perhaps in the future. Any other questions we have? If not, oh, there we go, Nancy.
I was talking with Arasana about this earlier. I actually studied bystander intervention. And what they talked about is the greater the number of people that observe what's going on and do nothing, it's called diffusion of responsibility. No one person feels responsible. But if that first person, they don't have to go in and tackle, but they say, hey, that's wrong, whatever it is, and say what it is. You shouldn't be pushing that rig around, or you shouldn't be pushing that kid around, or whatever it is. All it takes is that first person to step out of line, then everybody jumps in. And I have actually seen this happen because I promised myself when I learned this that if necessary, I would be that first person. And it has always happened. So just keep that in mind, except if there's blood or it's too scary. You can do things between, and I've watched myself, your two impulses are either to ignore it completely or throw yourself physically in the middle. You don't have to do either one. Start thinking now about the situations that you've encountered and start thinking about what that middle ground is and what you could have done. And then you'll be more prepared in the future.
Thank you, Nancy. And remember, there's safety in numbers. Safety in numbers. Well, we thank you for coming. Thank you for coming out and joining us, and we hope to see you again. Thank you.
Also, speaking of having each other's backs, if we have somebody mechanically inclined, we have a woman who is having a car problem of some kind. I'm trying to track her down right now to see where she went. But if somebody wants to volunteer to assist, I'm going to suggest for now maybe going over to this tower that I'm pointing to, and I'll round her up and send her that way. Thank you.
Well, thank you guys for coming in. I'm sorry it's so boring. Yeah, Eric fell asleep. Yeah, I think so. No, I know that, like, Well, there are only 3 people up on stage, and I should make a talk about that in a little while. Why? There was some